Hello and welcome to the Two Robbies podcast, your destination for in-depth discussion and analysis of the Premier League. I'm Robbie Mustoe. He's normally Robbie, but not today, being joined by special guest host and very good friend, Danny Higginbotham. Here are today's topics. Another game, another come-from-behind victory for Aston Villa, as Ollie Watkins comes off the bench to rescue all 3 points in a 2-1 win against Chelsea. Rayan Cherki's late stunner at Nottingham Forest keeps Pep's men's afoot in the title race and extends City's win streak to 8 in all competitions. And Arsenal hold their nerve and rely on a brilliant David Raya save and a 2-1 win against Brighton, keeping their margin at the top of the table very narrow. That's what we have coming up in today's episode. All right, Danny. Welcome into the show, mate. Thanks for popping in. Always good to catch up. Lots of things again this weekend, and we're kind of getting towards a halfway point in the season. Be good to have a chat today about all things Premier League. Let's start with the Chelsea game, mate. And Chelsea won, Aston Villa 2. Watkins with those 2 late goals. Another come from behind victory. I don't know whether you saw my comments, Danny, and of course I'll get yours in a second. You know, the difference of Aston Villa from the first half to the second half is something we've seen before. I remember early in the season, Danny, when I saw Aston Villa playing so passively in the first half, I've said things like at half time, wow, come on Villa, let's I want to see more than that. Like that's not what you're about. You're not even competitive. We keep seeing it. And sometimes they're drawing, sometimes they're losing, but we're seeing it all the time where the second half is very different, expansive, front foot, momentum shift, substitutions from Unai Emery that adds into that, and teams get caught. A lot of the other big sides have been caught like this the same way. Chelsea were caught again. First question, is this a deliberate intention for an Unai Emery to conserve energy, to be very safe and solid, with the thought of they might blow themselves out of steam here at home, or fired up to try and win possession and create things for them in the second half to come through and win games?
It's exactly what I think it is. It was interesting because I was listening to you and Tim yesterday, I think it was, in the comments, and you said the same thing at half time. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this isn't the Aston Villa that we're supposed to be seeing. You know, they're coming to Chelsea, they're on this unbeaten run. But as you said previously, I think that half time that you and Tim obviously had in between Chelsea and Villa, you've probably had that so many times already this season.
Yeah.
And it's too often for it to be a coincidence. And I think if you look at the substitutions as well, you look at the plays that came on. I thought he did really well. Obviously, we know with Watkins, he got the 2 goals. But it's as though Emery's got a team that are comfortable defending deep, knowing that there's sort of a method behind the so-called madness in the first half. Because I think he looks at it and, okay, you don't want to go behind, you don't want to be losing at half time, but I think if it's 1-0, I think they're quite comfortable because they've got all this energy, and because it's happened so many times. You know what it's like, Mustoe, as a footballer, when you get into a rhythm of something and it's happening on a regular occurrence, and in a positive way, you have full confidence going into the second half that you're going to go and win the game. So for me, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the way that Emery sort of strategically picked his substitutions when he was going to make them were just at the perfect time. They were playing against a Chelsea team that sort of looked tired. They looked as though it was as though Aston Villa had said, listen, you can just keep throwing everything at us. And if it's 1-0 going into the last 30 minutes, we know that we're going to win this game because we've got energy that we've been able to keep by just defending deep, and we've got players that can come onto the pitch and add the pace. Now, from your side of things, is that risky? Or do the results speak for themselves, so therefore it's not?
I'll tell you what it is, mate. It's unprecedented. Unless we're missing something. I'm not sure I've ever thought or saw before, even commented, I think this is a deliberate ploy. That not to contest the ball, Danny. Not to think, you know what, Chelsea like to have possession, but so do we. And we're going to high press. Whatever that proactive plan is, I don't know whether I've ever seen or commented on a team or a manager that's saying, we're here for the long game here. Like, we're going to win this in the second half. Back to your question, it feels risky and it feels a little bit unbelievable. Like, literally, really? I made the comments and we went back to stadium, and of course Graham Mustoe was a commentator. And I think naturally he's like, I don't know about that, Robbie. Like, really? Like, that they are there to play. I mean, he used the words "play badly." We don't. I didn't mean that. They're not there to play badly, but to be conservative and to conserve energy, with the thought of go ahead. Like we're just gonna. I mean, have you ever seen that before, Danny? As a strategy that's obvious and so effective.
The only thing that I've seen in it isn't quite the same, but I don't know whether you had this experience. But like when we used to go and play Manchester United, especially when you used to go to Old Trafford, they used to lead you into a false sense of security. But that was in the first 15 minutes. Right. They would let you have a few touches. They would let you they would sort of make you feel at home and sort of get into your head that this game's going to be all right. You know, it's not going to be that bad. And all of a sudden it's 3-0. So that's the only real sort of example that I've seen. But I must admit, I thought the comments from Watkins after the game were interesting as well, because he said, you know, maybe it's just because we're fitter than the other teams. One of the things I would say, Mustoe, from your perspective as a central midfielder, if you're going to play the first half so drastically different than the second half, you have to be unbelievably disciplined in that first half, because there's going to be times where it's like, I want to go on this run, or I want to release this player. So therefore your communication, your leadership through the spine of the team, it has to be absolutely spot on. But I would also say, because, you know, you have to talk about them in this title race, they're playing with zero pressure. Nobody expected them to be there, especially at this point of the season when you've got Arsenal and Manchester City going so well. But they are there. And the problem that you have, what I'm really interested to see, and it's very difficult because the longer this goes on, and I think this becomes a really valid point as well, Mustoe, the longer the season goes on, the better this works for Villa. Because what you find in the early stages of the season, teams will go, oh, we'll sit back, it's early on in the season. But now as the season goes on, teams need to get points. Like Aston Villa could be playing a team near the bottom. They could be playing a team that are trying to get into the top four, a team that's potentially trying to catch Aston Villa, trying to catch Arsenal, trying to catch Manchester City. So ordinarily you would say, well, what if the opposition just said, well, we're just going to sit off you? We're getting into the second half of the season now where I don't think teams can do that. So that actually works in Aston Villa's favour.
So even if they recognise this as a tactic and a strategy for Unai, that they say like and we don't want to touch on it yet because we're going to kind of a small preview on the Arsenal game. Arsenal play Villa on Tuesday. Fascinating, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. You still think it will still be effective, even though scouts and people are watching the games, managers like, wow, Villa, like they're two teams here, by the way, and we've got to be ready for both of them. You still think they might catch people out as the season goes on?
I do, because I think temptation's too great. Yeah. And if you put yourself into a dressing room and you're playing against Aston Villa, and if all of a sudden you're a front-footed team, you're a team that wants to dominate the ball, the manager, if the manager turns around to you and goes, right, today and for one game only, we're going to sit off. Now, straight away, what you're doing, you're asking the players to play differently, but basically you're telling the players that they're not good enough to beat Aston Villa at whatever your style is. So I think that becomes really important. But as the season goes on, if Aston Villa remain there or thereabouts, as the season goes on, like I say, you're probably going to have a third of the table making sure that, you know, I'm not necessarily saying there's going to be that many teams that are involved in the relegation, but you've seen how big the gap is. There's something like 6 points between 10th and 4th in the Premier League, which is incredible. So as the season goes on, Aston Villa are going to be coming up against teams that really, really need the points. And it becomes a game of patience. Yeah. And I think from Aston Villa's side of things, because they're comfortable playing this way, they will be more patient than the opposition because they score late goals. They're comfortable. They've got players that can come off the bench and make a difference.
And they're not flat out, Danny. They're not flat out for 90 minutes. They're flat out for 45 minutes. So they're rested. It's like half a game.
They're conserving their energy. But my only concern is, and this is why I think, like, from your perspective as a central midfielder, if you're a central midfielder that's a defensive midfielder, a box-to-box, or a central midfielder that wants to drift into that 10 position, how difficult is it to sit in there in those first 45 minutes if you see it and go, oh, wow, I can go make that run now? Yeah, how tempting. Difficult is it? It's very tempting. So that's where your discipline has to be on another level. And I would love to watch them training because I think this is too much to be a coincidence. I think there'll be certain patterns of play that they do in games, certain things where it's like, listen, we're just going to come at you. We're going to come at you as though you're sort of lining up as the opposition. and you've just got to defend in this sort of block, whether you're sitting a little bit deeper, knowing full well that in the second half what's going to come your way. But what a feeling that must be for the players, knowing that they've got so much in reserve when it comes to the second half.
2 points before we move it on a little bit. To your first point about temptation. Now, there will be moments in that first half when there will be a little opportunity for counter-attack, and I'm sure they're going to. It's not as though like, no, we don't want it. We're going to wait. They will take it if they're given it, but there'll be fewer of those because they're very passive in it. So I think that will happen. The other part of it, just back on the strategy, we've seen Unai Emery before in quite extreme strategies. Remember earlier, like last season or the season before, this crazy high line, right? And we're watching, like, wow. So he certainly has theories. And he trains and drills these players into certain, whatever his theory or strategy is at that moment. That's why, again, this looks so kind of different and extreme that it probably is something he works at. Let's move it on, Danny, in terms of Villa. Before we get to Chelsea, we'll talk Chelsea in a second. Can they stay there? What is it? Can they stay around the top there in the race? I've said, magnificent what they're doing right now. I just don't. They're winning games very narrowly. That's the last 9 in all competitions by winning with just one goal, which is great to win tight games, but it's tougher over a longer period of time. How do you feel about in terms of how Villa can keep this run up?
I think they can stay there. I think they can,
right through March.
Yeah. I think that they can, and the reason I say this is because obviously we could speak to Dicko about this, but like. When he was playing at Arsenal, it was 1-0 to the Arsenal. And I know that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, I think the Premier League this season is a throwback. And obviously we'll come on and we'll talk about Manchester City coming up. It took a bit for Manchester City to adapt. And you go back, you make a really good point with Emery playing the high line. The reason he doesn't play a high line now, because what do teams want more than anything in the Premier League now? They want set pieces. So you don't want to be playing a high line and having to make a long busting run and then having to make a slide tackle that's going to go out for a throw-in or for a corner. So I think the way that the Premier League is this year, I think this is arguably the most physical I've seen the Premier League for a long time. With the teams that have come up, with the players that have been signed, with the amount of set pieces that we're seeing scored. So I don't see any reason why they can't be there or thereabouts. And when you look at the three teams, there is, other than from Villa themselves and from their fans, and even their fans, I don't think their expectations would be to win the Premier League. So there's zero expectations. So we can talk about the squads of City, we can talk about the squads of Arsenal, we can talk about the squad of Villa. This is going to come down to the mentality side, who's able to deal with pressure. Well, Aston Villa, they've got next to no pressure on them at the moment, and I find it fascinating.
Interesting. On to Chelsea, Danny, and I know whether you feel like Enzo Maresca was kind of outcoached a little bit, outthought a little bit. Are they? I mean, they're a funny team, aren't they? Because sometimes he's kind of smart coach as well, the way he coaches the team. I think Cole Palmer's still yet to find his best form. How do you feel about Chelsea right now, Danny? I think, probably 4 or 5 spots might get Champions League. That'll be the minimum standard required or expected at Chelsea. I feel like Enzo, with those comments about a week ago, the fans, I feel, are still unsure about Maresca as a manager for this football club. Are they doing okay for you? Are they underperforming for you? Is this expected with a young squad? They're still the youngest team in the Premier League.
Yes. I think you have to bring youth into it. I think you also have to bring the fact that they had zero break. Manchester City.
Right.
Manchester City had a bit more of a break. Yeah, they won the Club World Cup, and then straight away they're coming in. He's having to manage players' minutes. Everyone's going on about the chopping and changing of the back four, which is happening on a regular occurrence. That's because he's having to manage minutes.
Yeah.
There's players that are playing with injuries that he's trying to manage them. And I think because of that, there's a lack of consistency. Then you throw the sort of the youth aspect into it. There's some wonderful players there. And I think each year that goes on, they're going to get better with the group, because it's all about the experiences.
Yeah.
But
are the fans going to be patient, Danny? Are the fans going to be okay to wait for that?
I think the fans that are deep in thought with it will understand, because I think there has been a lot going on. I think we have to remember as well with Maresca, he's there as the coach, not the manager, so to speak. So the players a lot of the times are brought into the club, and it's not necessarily his choice. Yes, he'll have a say in it, but then he's got to coach these players and make sure that they're okay for this team. So I think I think they're doing okay. I think Maresca at times doesn't get the credit he deserves. I think he's a very, very emotional individual. And at times, like when he came out the other week, and I'll still say it now, I don't think there was a thought process behind it. I just thought that he wanted a little bit of love potential. I don't think he was doing it for any specific reason. He's just a very, very emotional guy. And what I found interesting with that press conference is that he's very strategic in the terms of the way he sets his players up. If players are 2 yards to the left or 2 yards to the right, they shouldn't be. He'll go crazy because he's a deep thinker. But I don't think there was any sort of deep thought that went into that press conference. Where do you think Chelsea are at the moment?
I'm similar.
Do you expect them to be challenging?
No, I thought they might. I think the Club World Cup is something that we maybe do forget quickly about.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're young and young players can seemingly play, every few days, but there is going to be rotations. There is a learning part to it. I do like him as a coach because we're both that guy, Danny, where we're seeing some stuff that the fullbacks, the positions they go into, it's like, wow, this is unusual, this is different. Love to see that. I just worry about the connection of the fans because the fans are so used to, Danny, success, trophies, or you get out, somebody else comes in. Buy-in, the finished article.
Different club
this
now.
This is so different club. Yeah, and I just don't know whether fans are ready for that. Given the money they've spent, they might say, well, we should have bought the finished article like we always have. No, I like the project. I mean, it is a project. They're the youngest team. There's going to be some stars. We haven't seen much of Estevao again. Danny, maybe he could have come on earlier, I thought, in this game. So there's players
That's another thing. So when you look at Maresca, he wants specific players in specific positions. He probably gives freedom to maybe one or two players. And I would love to see Estevao start with Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
They have not started
they should.
Premier League game.
That's possible.
But that's not. But I would love to see that. But I think Maresca's way of thinking, he only wants to give maybe two players at most freedom. And that's usually Cole Palmer if he's playing, or it's Neto. So therefore, there's not room for a third. I would love to see it. I think it'd be amazing. They had instant success, I think. I know it was a pre-season friendly, but they played one pre-season friendly together. I think it might have been in Germany. And they were incredible. But doing that in the Premier League, seeing that in the Premier League, I would love to see it.
Yeah.
Will we get to see it?
I think we will, Danny.
Convinced.
I think we will.
I hope so from the start.
Yeah. Let's move it on to, again, this first section of the podcast is about the title race. And we saw them all on Saturday this weekend. Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester City 2. It took a pretty late goal, a strike from the edge of the box of Rayan Cherki, Danny. I talked about Rayan Cherki, Tijani Reinders, the new players into the team that have taken a little bit of time to feel comfy, to be consistent. I would worry over a longer period of time. Someone like Rayan Cherki, he's 21 or 22, whether he can keep doing what he's doing. But if he does, they look brilliantly creative and grooved. A little bit of a different system this time, a bit of a Christmas tree with Pep. The fullbacks provide the width, where it's often been wingers with Doku and Savinho and others over the past years. I know you feel pretty good about Man City, Danny, in terms of how they're coming on right now. Let us know your thoughts.
Well, I want to go back a few weeks. Do you remember the crazy game when they beat Fulham 5-4?
Yeah.
And this is how football changes so quickly. I remember because I was doing the show that day, and I think it was with Tim, and we were talking after the game, and the question was, who is most likely to challenge Arsenal? Is it Chelsea or is it Manchester City? And I said, well, Manchester City aren't going to challenge like that. So for me, it has to be Chelsea. That was the turning point for Manchester City, because you mentioned the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
After that game, Pep Guardiola plays the Christmas tree formation.
Right.
And up until, I think, against Forest, I think they kept 3 or 4 clean sheets in a row and won each of the games 3-0. And I think it was Pep Guardiola coming to terms with this new, more physical Premier League, because it's like I've said it previously, I think this is the most physical Premier League I've seen in a long time. And with going to sort of that 4-3-2, when it's given them an extra man in midfield and it's given them extra control.
It's a narrow control,
yes,
isn't it?
Exactly. And whereas I looked at that Fulham game and thought, there's no way that Manchester City can challenge when they're like 5-1 up and nearly end up drawing the game 5-5. That was sort of a watershed moment for Pep Guardiola, where he's like, I've got to change something because this can't continue. And all of a sudden, things change. You see Guardiola in his press conference seems really different again, seems on top of things. He does. He just seems a completely different character now. So for me, I put them right up there. I think the 5-4 win against Fulham was sort of a blessing in disguise. It was an unbelievable game, but I think there's been sort of a change after that from Guardiola.
Yeah, and of course, Rodri was on the bench, Danny. He's coming back. Yeah. He's going to mitigate what I'm going to ask you next. And on the show today, Danny, we talked about why these three teams of the contenders right now, why they wouldn't win it. And for me, with Man City, it was still... The transition-wise, they still look vulnerable to me. And their recent run of games have been against teams that you would expect them to beat. And the intricate football worked again in this game. I think against the tougher sides, they're still going to give up too many chances. Rodri will help that. And if they find a way, I always think with City, I've said it many times on the show, like, it's their football. If their football's really accurate and slick and secure and they make good decisions, the other team don't have the ball enough. If their football's a little off, they get pressed a little bit and they don't do a great job of looking after the ball, transition-wise, they are vulnerable. They're a team not set up to defend. That would be a reason, as well as the can Cherki and can Reinders and others, and can Foden's less of a concern because he's shown he can do it before, be consistent. But can those two, particularly those new midfield players, keep up this quality that's enabling the brilliant football, the great amount of chances created and scored? So that would be my two reasons. Consistency of those new players, and I still think they give up too many chances. What would be your reason that City don't find a way to win the title this year? Similar?
No, I don't think so. I know Arsenal are clear at the moment, but I don't see Man City not winning the league.
So you don't see any of those issues? Do you think transition-wise they're going to figure that out?
So the reason, but you brought a specific name into it, and you brought Rodri into it. And when you bring Rodri into it, what he does for this team is incredible. You know yourself as a central midfielder how important that position is. So what happens with Rodri? Because I always believe that Manchester City, you've hit the nail on the head. They can be open to the transition. When they lose the ball, they're all over the place. Yeah. When you bring Rodri into the team, so first of all, when Rodri's not playing, two players have to do his role, right? So if two players are having to do his role, that means you've got one less player going forward, okay? You bring Rodri into this team, you can then say to an extra player, listen, you can go forward. Rodri is that good that he can take care of that. Now, if you're committing more men forward, you've got even more opportunities to score, but more important, you have got one more player going forward that's going to stop that transitional play. So instead of pressing with a 4 when you lose the ball, all of a sudden there's 5 right on top of you. And I think Rodri enables you to defend better, but also to commit more men forward and sort of stop the counter-attack before it begins, even though he's probably 25 yards away from it. So if Rodri comes back and gets back to the play that we know that he is, the play that won Ballon d'Or, for me, then I don't see Manchester City being stopped, because I don't think it's going to be all about what's happening on the pitches in terms of the ball at their feet and how they're stopping the counter-attacks. I also think it becomes a mental thing. And with Manchester City, you've got players that have been there and done it before in the Premier League. And when you have that know-how, it gives you a huge advantage.
Also, Danny, we got to, Phil Foden's form right now looks like a different player. Looks like a player that 2 years ago won the player of the Premier League season. Last year, ankle injuries, I think some personal off-the-field issues were hampering his performance, and he looks like he's flying again. With those new players, with a different setup, with the big man up front, Erling Haaland, looking as good as ever. If he stays fit, you're probably going to need him to stay fit for the majority. There's no reason why he can't. They're going to have quite the run. I totally agree. Quick, before we move on to Arsenal, I want a quick thought on Nottingham Forest, because Sean Dyche is in charge now, and when you look at the table, they're still right in it. I mean, I know they've got a bit of a cushion there to West Ham United. There's a 5-point gap to the bottom 3 for Forest, where West Ham are that third team with 13 points. Nottingham Forest have got 18. When you look at the Forest team and some of the players they've got, with Gibbs White, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Elliot Anderson, the centre backs are good at Forest, goalkeeper's pretty good. They're going to pull away from that area, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think they don't even come into the conversation for me. I just think with Sean Dyche, it's It's similar to Nuno when Nuno was at Forest, complete opposite to Postecoglou. Postecoglou had a group of players that didn't suit Postecoglou's style. It was such a bizarre appointment. Sean Dyche comes in. You know what it's like when a new manager comes into a club that sort of gets you and gets the way that you want to play football. All of a sudden, you feel that weight taken off your shoulders. And people going about Sean Dyche is in terms of defence first and foremost, which I get, but they're also scoring goals. He defends to score. So he defends deep, because then you can utilise the pace that you've got, especially in the wide areas. So I don't put them into any conversation. Let me ask you this then, Mustoe, quickly. The three at the bottom, do you see any of those three potentially getting out of the situation they're in? Because 5 points is a lot when you're down at the bottom of the table.
I still see West Ham United having a chance. And I know, they should be doing better than they are right now. Nuno Espirito Santo is a manager that I really like. I feel like he's doing at the moment, he's trying his best to make him stronger. It ain't really working. That's a worry. Like, he should be able to start with a strong foundation. I'm not sure his central defenders are not anywhere near good enough. So that's going to be a challenge. And you're right. I just see another 20 games, Danny. There's another 20 games. And the teams ahead, Leeds United are having a good run right now. Bournemouth are dropping like a stone. But, so for example, Leeds are on 20 points. They got to look at, they still need another 16 points, 17, 18 points. And I know, and we both know what it's like, Danny, to be in that area. And it still feels like that's a long way off to get those points. So I don't think it's done yet, even though there's a gap there. I look at Jared Bowen, I see Lucas Paquetá and some of the other players at West Ham and think there should be enough there. Somerville, there should be enough to start getting some points.
Home form. It's home form.
Which is so important. Yeah.
And that, you know what it's like when you're down at the bottom. Leeds United, they're getting some great results at home. Forest, they're getting some great results at home. West Ham, really, really struggling.
Do you think the bottom three are going to be the three? We're just under a half of season done.
Do you know what? I was asked the question about a week ago, and I was like, no, I can see West Ham getting out of it. Now, it's not the fact that I don't think West Ham can't get out of it, but when I look at who they're trying to catch,
they're all doing okay. They all look okay, apart from Forest.
Forest for me will be fine. Mostly Leeds, they've had an upturn in form, and I know you. I think you and Tim were speaking about it earlier. I think it was actually earlier this morning. You're talking about he's changed the system. Yeah. And it looks so much better for them. They're now looking solid. So it's not a case of West Ham obviously getting the points, but it's Forest and Leeds dropping points. And I don't see that, especially when Leeds' home form is outstanding and Forest will get better as well.
Okay, mate, the Gunners. Got it done again. Another one that was a bit squeaky bum time at the end and a tight victory, 2-1. Diego Gomez's goal for Brighton made it a little bit hairy at the end. We saw a brilliant save from David Raya, Danny, from a great shot in that midfield area that he picked out and just tipped over the top. The narrow victories, is this something that will concern the manager? Is he okay? Like we said earlier, like Arsenal used to win 1-0 and that's okay. Could they potentially drop points like they did 2 years ago, where they kept drawing games and kept dropping points? Are you concerned with it, or is it a period of time where certain players are out, they're not quite as secure as they normally are at the back? 2 goals from Arsenal at home is normally done and dusted. Like, for 2 goals, it got a little hairy. Gabriel came on, so Saliba and Gabriel are potentially back together again. We know there's issues with White and Timber and Calafiori. Where you stand right now in Arsenal, Danny, in this game and their ability to keep that gap at the top?
They've been outstanding this season. They've been absolutely brilliant. And I think when you look at them, their strength in depth defensively, there's a big argument to say that they've probably got the most balanced squad in the Premier League. Defensively, when everybody's fit,
it's impeccable, isn't it? It's really strong.
They're outstanding. My concern, and my one concern, has always been, and this is sort of a question I want to throw back at yourself, how important, when we're talking about, like you say, you have to bring Emery into it, you have to bring, obviously, Guardiola's in, and Arteta. How important, when you're going into the second half of the season, do you think the managers are? Because that's going to lead on to my next point.
Yeah, I know you're hot on this one, aren't you, Danny? The way the managers you handle this kind of run-in. I think it's a valid point. I think the squad this time, for me, overrides I feel like Arsenal haven't quite been ready squad-wise to win it. I think we all agree that this season, with the additions, they are ready to win it. I think the thought of Victor Gyökeres being the missing part was an important piece that the Arsenal fans and everybody want him to be the guy to score the goals, to take games away from teams when they may be up one, to get the second and third goal. That concerns me, Danny. That Victor Gyökeres concerns me more than Mikel Arteta's ability to get it over the line. I know you're not sure whether he might be a bit emotional. Obviously, the experience of not winning a league title in this kind of division. I still am a little disappointed with Gyökeres, Dan. And before anything else, I do want to get your take on him because, we know he's done well in other leagues. Am I being overcritical by saying that he looks like a championship striker? This great effort, he's got physicality, but that the quick feet, the quality, the scoring goals out of nothing. You go and watch his video, his tape of his best moments. He gets the ball wide, he drives inside, he scores from different angles. We haven't really seen it yet. He's a top goal scorer with 5, Danny. 2 of them are penalties. Give me your take on Victor Gyökeres.
It's an interesting one because I think there's a positive and I think there's a negative. I think the negative is what you've just said. He's a player that needs chances sort of created
put
for him.
On a plate
he's
for
not
him.
Sort of he's not sort of a player that's going to, like Marino is, which is like he's going to drop, he's going to link, and then he's look to get in the final ball, drop, and then create space in behind. But what I would say, and it's something that I've noticed over recent games with Arsenal, when Gyökeres plays, opposition teams drop deeper. When you take him off the pitch, all of a sudden the opposition teams, they're like, we can push a little bit higher now. Because yes, they've got Saka, but Saka's not a player that's like, okay, I'm going to play on the shoulder of the last man. He wants to sort of get involved as well a little bit deeper and go. And the same with sort of Trossard on the left-hand side, Martinelli to a lesser extent. But when Gyökeres is playing, you watch how difficult it is for teams that they're playing against to move up and down the pitch. They get stretched because he is going to play on the shoulder. So that's the positive. But the negative side is, as you quite rightly said, is that he needs chances created for him. He's come into an Arsenal team that doesn't necessarily suit the way that he plays. He's a centre forward where you're like, okay, we want to play on the counter attack with him because he wants to play on that last shoulder, on the shoulder of the last defender. He wants to get in behind, and that's when he's at his best. But when he comes off the pitch, and I think it was yesterday maybe I noticed it a bit, when he comes off the pitch, all of a sudden the opposition are like, we can play 10, 15 yards high up the pitch now. And that's when they can sort of keep Arsenal in their little bit of an area. And that's when it gets a little bit nervy. But it's a difficult one. At the moment, Marino would be my centre forward for Arsenal, just because of the way that he plays. He suits the Arsenal style better than Gyökeres does at the moment.
Before I get a longer term view on you of Arsenal, just a word on Martin Odegaard, because before the game, Rebecca asked us a couple of things about what to watch out for, and I said, well, Saka's a brilliant player. Wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more from Bukayo Saka over recent weeks. And Martin Odegaard, I said more. I want to see more from him. He's the captain. I don't want to see a player that just knits it together, right? Which is what Zubimendi can do. Declan Rice can certainly do it. I want to see a difference maker. More contributions to goals, more through balls, more key passes, more assists, more goals. He got a great goal in this game. Saka fizzed the ball into him. His touch was great and he scored. Is that an important part of how Arsenal are going to win the title if their captain, their main midfield player, is creating more goal-scoring involvements?
Yeah, I think so, because they don't have a Haaland. They don't have a Haaland which is like can turn a really dull 0-0 into a 1-0. That's the big difference. So it has to be a collective. So what you need players that are going to give assists. You need players that are going to get the goals. And I think with Odegaard, what he needs sort of that little bit of space in front of him, because we know, I think, at best, him, Saka and Timber, the way that they link up down that right-hand side,
it's good, yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. And we've got to remember as well, I think he's had a bit of inconsistency because he's had injuries himself. He's missed time, so that can be difficult. But I just feel that there is a little bit of a nervousness. And the interesting thing yesterday was Arsenal won the game, and Brighton can consider themselves a little bit unfortunate, especially when you look at the last third of the game. But the Arsenal players walking off the pitch, it was like, and you want to see that they didn't look happy even though they'd won the game. And I think it might actually have been Odegaard as he was walking off, where it was like he just didn't look happy. And you want to see that, but also you can take that one of two ways. You can take it, yep, they're not happy because they want a little bit more, or just the frustration just starting to settle in a little bit, as in terms of, yes, they're winning these games, but they are tight games. And other than, the great save yesterday, one of the best saves of the season from Raya, it could have been a different story completely.
As a quick follow-up, what would be the reason that Arsenal don't do it? We know how you feel about Man City.
Themselves.
So you're still on the mentality thing. Not that they might not score enough goals, not that they're not putting teams away, but you think they're going to get nervy, they're going to get edgy, and the manager's not going to turn the dial in the right manner to do more attacking or to see off games or to. You still feel that lack of know-how to win an English title is going to hold them back.
Yeah, I do to a certain extent. So if you look, not so much this year because they have done it a couple of times, but if you look in the previous 2 seasons, if I've got this right, the previous 2 seasons, every time they lost a game, they didn't follow it up with a win over the last 2 years. This season's been a little bit different. They've had a couple of defeats, then they followed it up with a win. I just think that, and once again, I heard you and Tim talking about it, past experiences. You look at, what was it? Was it a couple of years ago when they were something? They were streets ahead going into like March or April.
But I still didn't think they were ready. I still didn't think that they had enough in that squad to keep it going.
So what? Okay, so then what makes them ready, and B,
squad.
The gap. But the gap has been cut down hugely already, and we're not even into January.
Yeah,
yet.
I think they've got a lot of tough away games out of the way. I think they've had a tougher schedule. I think the squad is better now. I think once that back four and they shake off those injuries, I think they can get back to being incredibly hard to beat. And I'm trusting in the attacking flair that's been brought in, Danny, that we've seen a little bit from Eze, who's got the hat-trick in the North London derby. Madueke, Kai Havertz isn't far away. Gabriel Jesus is back. Saka's finest form again. The options on the left with Martinelli and maybe Madueke and Trossard. And Marino, I just think there's enough options in all areas of the pitch to get the job done. And the 2-point gap is a 2-point gap. Man City have lost 4 games, and I keep saying this, and it's a silly little stat, but it's something, if you look back in the history of the Premier League, it's very rare that you can win a league title with 5, 6 starts to get pretty rare. And they're 2 losses off of that. So I know they're only 2 points behind, but those 2 points are meaningful. I think Arsenal's schedule up to this point has been harder. A lot of tough away games that are done and negotiated. They have got to go to City yet, I believe. So that's going to be very difficult. It's a great race, mate. It's a great race. And, they never get a better chance.
Just one last thing on it. And it was something that I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago. And it was like, Arsenal, for me, I've waxed lyrical about them all season. They've been sensational, and the injuries are hurting them. When you look at their strongest starting 11 and then the ability and the plays that they've got to come off the bench, it's unbelievable. Yeah. They've been outstanding this season. We've sort of said that Manchester City haven't been great this year, but they're 2 points behind an Arsenal team that have been phenomenal. You know what I want to see as well? And this is something that it takes you back years and years ago. Remember Sir Alex Ferguson with Kevin Keegan. Remember Sir Alex Ferguson with Rafa Benitez. When the mind games start from Pep Guardiola, because they're coming.
I don't know. Do you think is he that sort of guy though? Is he that guy to put a few doubts in?
I think because you have to remember these 2 guys know each other very well. And there's, they've obviously got huge admiration and huge respect for each other, but they also know each other. And I would not be surprised in the slightest if we just see a few little things over the coming weeks, the coming next couple of months, where Guardiola just throws a few things in there, and it'll be interesting to see how they react. But this Arsenal team is, and this is what I want to say, this Arsenal team is good enough to win the Premier League. They've got a manager that's consistently getting better. But when the pressure's on, that's when I'm interested to see what happens. Because they've got phenomenal players. But we know within the Premier League, when we see it year in, year out, it's the mentality side of it. The top players, it's having that mentality to go, we're going to deal with this. If they do it, fair play.
Yeah, and also, of course, City have done it. I mean, they have that.
Yes.
It's done and dusted, like they got huge experience of winning titles. Just a quick line on the game on Tuesday, Danny, sorry. 3:15 Eastern time on Peacock, Arsenal versus Aston Villa. Without having a big, massive preview, we've talked about both of these clubs. I'm absolutely fascinated in seeing how Villa approach it.
What a game.
What do you feel about it? Is tactics going to be important? Are Arsenal just going to try and blow them away? Are Aston Villa going to say, all right, Come on, show us what you got, and be ready in the second half, by the way, because we've got tons of options off the bench, and we're going to fly at you in the second half, because that's what they do away from home. What are you thinking?
I think Arsenal go into this game and they'll be looking to make a statement. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They'll be looking to say, yeah, we are the top team. And then all of a sudden, because Manchester City don't play until a couple of days afterwards, so if Arsenal get the win, that puts them 5 points clear. Puts a little bit of pressure on Manchester City. Yeah, it is. It's a huge if. From Aston Villa's perspective, from Emery's perspective, it'll be like, listen, allow them to do the running. What Aston Villa do really, really well, because they defend so deep, we know that the Premier League is full of pace. They take the pace away of the opposition because they drop deep so they don't leave the space in behind. And what they'll look to do, Emery will be like, he will play the game in thirds. The first third will be, let's frustrate Arsenal. The second bit will be, let's frustrate the fans. Get the nerves coming. Then all of a sudden the nerves start to come onto the pitch. And if they're going into 60, 65 minutes,
they'll get more desperate.
1-0 to Arsenal.
They'll get more desperate to go forward, and Villa like.
And then Villa do what Villa do.
Here we go. Yeah,
that's it.
Wow.
So it's going to be. You've got Emery, who I think is one of the best tacticians in the Premier League, and I think Arteta deserves a lot of credit as well because of the way that he can set up things as well. So it's going to be an interesting game. It will not be 0-0 because I think you're going to have a team in Arsenal that will want to start really quickly. If they can get a first goal, can they get a second goal? You'll have Aston Villa be like, we're okay, we can play on the counter-attack. So it's going to be contrasting styles, but two teams that believe they can win the Premier League, which is brilliant.
Brilliant. Let's whip around the other games, Danny. I mean, that was our main sort of conversation about the title race. Manchester United got a victory against Newcastle United. Patrick Dorgu got a great volley on the edge of the box. I've got to be honest, mate, I was a bit surprised. I fancied Newcastle, given the teams, given the lineups, given the changes, and a back four. Couldn't believe it. I did this fancy big old. I did a fancy.
I watched it. I wasn't going to bring it up.
I did a fancy this is what I did last time, and this different midfield shape, and still three at the back, and and then also, by the way, they got shot doing three at the back practice.
Martinez was on the right of it. I was watching.
I was like, oh, there they are, look. And they fooled everybody. And I've got that's note to self, like, don't believe any kind of warm ups because they know it's getting filmed, and the opposition are watching. And he shocked everybody with a four at the back. Just give us some thoughts on the Man United game.
I'm very much like you with the players that were missing, the players that were injured. I thought it was going to be potentially a Newcastle win. The only thing that maybe gave you a little bit of benefit of the doubt to Manchester United was Newcastle's away form's been awful. Going back to the back four situation, we know that Amorim's been married to the back three, since way back when, at other clubs that he's been at. But I just wonder whether he's been thinking about it in the back of his mind to play a back four, but he was waiting for Martinez because by the looks of it, he wants balance. He needs to have balance. And I think if you play Shaw and another on the right-hand side, you've not necessarily got that experience of a player that's played in a centre-back two on a consistent basis. I think with Martinez coming back, I think Amorim was like, okay, well, there's players missing, there's players out, there's players injured, there's players away. This might be the time for us to do it. Do I think he'll stick with that? I don't think he sticks with it.
So when Ahmad comes back and Burmo, he gets his right side back. You think he'll go back to his three at the back? Do you think he's doing this? I need another player. I need another player to create. So I'm going to go with the back four, take a defender out, and throw a little bit more attacking zest. And he likes Dorgu. He loves that left-footed player, Ahmad.
He was excellent.
Burmo, and Dorgu comes in on that left foot to come inside, and because he got his goal, he loves that inverted winger. And that was another surprise. Like Dorgu's playing right wing of a 4-2-3-1. Amazing.
First few minutes, I was like, what's going on here? Is Dorgu just here because he's been defending a corner on the other side? I think he could go back to a back three earlier than that. I think De Ligt or Maguire, if one of those comes back, then I think you could see him then go back to a back three potentially. It's so I don't think the back four is long term. They got the result against Newcastle, but I think from Amorim's side of things, it'd be interesting to see what they do in January. Can they do a little bit of business? There's been a talk about a few players going there. Can they get another central midfielder? Wing backs are going to be the key. Wing backs are the key in this system, and United have started to get a little bit more from them recently, but Amorim will be wanting more from them.
I got to remember the thing that he said, wasn't it? Amorim talked about we're going to change because the way I want to play, we're not going to spend that amount of money to get the players that I want. And that kind of makes sense to me, because I've never been a big why is he doing this system? Because I'm thinking, well, when he gets the players for the system, it's going to look good. But the ones that brought in haven't really done great, and he's not sure he's going to get a ton of money to bring others in to make that 3-4-3 the best it can be. So he's made a change. We'll see whether he sticks with it. This is a great result. To beat Newcastle United at home is a good result and brings Manchester United up to 6th place. Liverpool. How about Liverpool, Danny Higginbotham? How about sneaky finding a foundation again from Arne Slot, going back to basics, and now starting again and open it up again. It's a different style. It's very slow. It's slow. It's such a different Liverpool. It's methodical. It's a little bit tiki-taka, patient, and they're in 4th place right now, my friend. What are your thoughts on Liverpool and where they might end up this season?
It's like what you've said. He's gone back to basics, and I think that was one of the main reasons that Mo Salah wasn't playing. It's nothing to do with the quality and nothing to do with the goals, the assists.
He had to stop those goals going in, Danny, didn't he? He had to stop the goals going.
You had to stop the goals, and he made a statement. He's the manager. It's in his power to do whatever he wants to do. But now they're a team that they look a little bit more settled. The centre backs don't look as isolated, because it was just go, and all of a sudden it's like, no, we can't do this, because we're actually at our most vulnerable when we're attacking. So obviously they got the result against Wolves. They made it a little bit nervy for themselves with Wolves getting a goal back in the second half, and I can imagine that it was a very, very emotional game for everybody that was involved.
Yeah.
But it was a huge result for them. When you look at them at the moment, could they finish top 4?
Yeah, absolutely.
They potentially
absolutely.
Could. They could finish top 4. I think there's a lot of things that we have to keep our eye out for, as in terms when Salah comes back, what happens? How long is Isak going to be out for? Do they get players in January themselves? But it's fascinating. But they seem to have turned the corner for now, and there's some big games ahead for them, just to make sure that they're in that pack that's challenging for the top 4.
I think we can agree that Hugo Ekitike is a brilliant signing.
Yes.
And he leads the line brilliantly. Assisted a player that I wouldn't mind just getting a quick line before we move on. Florian Wirtz has struggled a little bit. He's struggled in terms of end product and affecting games and being that guy, the playmaker that assists and scores. Got his first goal for the club in this game against Wolves. Have you always been a believer in Florian Wirtz, or after watching him for quite a few months, did you think he was going to struggle to ever be effective at this level, or was it a matter of time?
I think it's a matter of time, because I think when you look at, now don't get me wrong, over the years there's been some players that have come to the Premier League and they have just settled so quickly.
Yeah.
So quickly.
Ekitike.
And yes, Ekitike, but he sort of came in without, there wasn't huge expectations on him. He was, because there was talk, I think, maybe that he potentially was going to be going to Newcastle. I think Newcastle might have been in for him, or a couple of other teams.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is, when you come in with, obviously, with the reputation that Wirtz has got, I think people sometimes forget that whatever league you're coming from, more often than not, it's a big step up. And when you're playing for Liverpool as well, it's a double whammy. You're stepping up as in terms, you're stepping up as in terms of the quality that you're playing against, the fee that you've come in for, the club that you're going to. So we expect sometimes these players to be like robots when they're human. So at times it can take players time to settle in, and we could probably, for every Wirtz, there's 2 or 3 other players that you can look at and go, well, remember this guy's first 6 months, or this guy's whatever it may have been. And things like that happen. I remember De Bruyne, when he was at Chelsea, it didn't work out for him. Went to Germany, got going, then came to Man City. Salah's another prime example. It didn't work for him at Chelsea. Yeah. So there's a number of players, and it can take time. But he's a quality player, and what football needs more of, and it doesn't have enough of, is patience. That goes for players and managers. So it's great to see him doing well now.
Absolutely right. So Tottenham Hotspur, Danny, 1-0 away from home at Crystal Palace, Sunday's game. And I don't know if I was angry today, or, a bit frustrated, or I was a bit feisty.
You angry?
Today. Yeah, I know, a bit feisty. I'm wanting to see more from Tottenham.
Okay.
And of course they won the game. Well done. And Tim Howard's saying, he isn't really that bothered how they're playing, because where they are on the league table right now, he needs wins to keep in his job. And I get that. And that's right. And that overrides probably my other thoughts. But my thoughts are, come on, I want to see a pattern, a strategy, a rhythm, some continuity. And I get everything about the amount of players that are out, and I get all the Champions League games, and every few days it's hard. He had a 4 weeks training. Am I being too harsh, Danny, in thinking that when I watch Tottenham right now, I know I'm not. They scrapped. They got good defenders.
Yeah.
I don't see any consistency in attacks. I don't see any proactive quality possession. I don't see a team that's really strong and sprints to counter-attack. I see a scrappy team that's playing a bit individually, and they got a set-piece goal. A little fortunate, really, that Palace didn't take one of the probably 4 really good chances they had. Am I being overcritical, or is this going to take time? Are the Spurs players not as good as what we think they are? And is it okay to take a whole season to just scrap away and try and climb a league table?
I think it's going to take time, but you mentioned proactive, and that's something that Thomas Frank is getting used to as well.
So what is he? Is he going to be proactive, Danny? Is he going to be a reactive coach?
He's going to have to be eventually. I think if you go back to his time at Brentford, he was assistant manager under Dean Smith in the Championship. He then took over. And, he got them to the point of where they were proactive in the Championship, and then they got promoted. Then in the Premier League, it's about being reactive.
Yeah, for that club, with that squad.
Yes, for that club. Now, you're going from Brentford and you're going to a club like Tottenham. Now, the problem that you can have when Thomas Frank goes in there, you have to get the respect from the players near enough straight away. And, that can be difficult at times going into a club as a new manager, especially when you've come from a club like Brentford. And that's meant in no disrespect whatsoever, but it's 2 completely different expectation levels. I love Thomas Frank. I feel as though he can get it right. And there's a reason.
Why do you love him? What? He's a lovely bloke, right? He's great interviews. Nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
I bet he's a good manager, right? That's easy. That's very likeable and lovable. What else do you love about him?
I like the way that he can set his teams up. I like the fact of when he was at Brentford, he lost Ivan Toney, and he was able to deal with that. He's lost big players over the years at Brentford, has been able to deal with that. And
good recruitment's come in to replace those guys.
Yeah, adjust accordingly. Now, good recruitment is absolutely vital at every club, whether it's your sporting director, whatever the title is. They're the key to everything.
Yeah.
But I just think. And it's so easy to see at the moment. When I talk about being reactive and proactive, at home you have to be proactive, away you can be reactive. They've got the joint most points away from home in the Premier League, if my memory serves me correct. And they're right near the bottom as in terms of home form. So what Thomas Frank has to do now, because it's not just the players that he's trying to make more proactive, he's actually got to learn that himself, because he's been more of a reactive manager over the years because of the size of the club that he's been at. 80% of the games in the Premier League that Brentford played, in fact, I'd say 90%, they were the underdogs. Now Tottenham are playing 7.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's different. So there's now an adjustment period for him. Yes, they've got injuries. You look at Solanke's not kicked a ball in anger from this season. Madison, Kulusevski, 3 big players for them. So I think that's going to take time. The one thing that's gone against him massively is that if his home form was his away form and his away form was his home form, we wouldn't be having as serious a conversation, because we know the home form, what have you got, 65,000? It's huge.
It is huge.
So
it is huge.
I just feel as though you have to give him the time
but you're glass half full, Danny, aren't you? I'll be honest, I'm glass half empty, and that's just me right now. You're different.
And you know what I would say, Mustoe, is that because I know him personally, that can, you know what it's like, sometimes that can sort of sway you as well. So that could have a part to play in it. Maybe if I didn't know him or anything like that, I may be in
a bit harsher.
Maybe saying the same thing as you. But I know him. I've got a lot of respect for him, and I know the way that he sees the game, and I believe that he can turn it around. But it's going to take time. It's going to take a little bit of money for him to be able to go out and spend, and then move forward from there. But the expectation levels, when you go to a club like Tottenham, we've said it for years. It doesn't matter where they finish in the league the year before. Expectation levels are always going to be there.
Yeah. Sunderland won, Leeds United won. Last couple of games now we're going to just talk about. And I'm going to chuck in my underappreciated, Danny, because me and Robbie, we do an underappreciated performer every weekend, and we didn't expect you to do it. Didn't expect you to do that. I've just had a little thought, and I was watching this game, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is my guy for this weekend. Yeah. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I'll hold my hands up, right, which I'm always very happy to do. And I'll be honest with you, if I was a director of Leeds United, and somebody said to me, "How about Dominic Calvert-Lewin?" Given his injury record over the last couple of seasons, I'd have been like, "Oh, he's free. Oh, okay. Well, maybe if he's free, we've got to do appearance-based money, because he hasn't played much." So I underappreciated him. Maybe Everton did. What do Everton need right now? They need a regular goal scorer. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is fit. He's playing every week. It looks like he's enjoying his football. There's not talk about him resting his hamstring or his injuries and da-da-da. He looks in great fettle, and he's scoring, I think he's 7 in 6, isn't it? I mean, he's having a brilliant season right now. Underappreciated is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. How do you feel about him, Danny? And do you sort of understand where I was coming from? I said to one of my good friends, a Leeds United fan, and I said, I think it's going to be a difficult season. It's all promoted teams. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and it was a huge if back in pre-season, if he can stay fit. I mean, he is a Premier League goal scorer. If he stays fit, and if the team provides him a little bit, then that might be your magic ticket to stay in the division. Right now, those Leeds United fans are like, well, this is kind of working out. With his regular goals, that makes real difference. That's real points when you score that amount. Is it all about Dominic Calvert-Lewin for you with Leeds United staying in the division, Danny?
Yeah, it is. I think it's huge. And I'll go back to you and Tim again earlier on today. You were talking about the system change for Leeds United.
Yeah.
They've got the wing-backs. Wing-backs are getting higher up the pitch. Dominic Calvert-Lewin doesn't want the ball to his feet. He wants the ball into the box. Yeah. And if you look at what they're doing now, the wing-backs have now got the license to get higher up the pitch because it's the same. Bizarrely enough, it's the same two wing-backs who were playing full-backs last year in the Championship. Right. And when they were playing full-backs in the Championship, have I got this right? I think Bogle definitely was.
Goodmanson's new. I think Gabriel Goodmanson, I think he's new for the season.
Sorry. So whoever was playing left-back last year for Leeds United, they were playing like wing-backs because they were so dominant. And I think Farke's looked at it and gone, my full-backs, I want to get them forward, but because we're under pressure quite a lot, I don't have that extra insurance for them both to be able to get forward. So what they've done now, they've got the extra man at the back, they've got the extra man in midfield. Those two are flying forward now. All of a sudden, you get the balls into the box. There's no question marks over Dominic Calvert-Lewin. The question marks over Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't been his ability to pull the ball into the back of the net. Goes to your point. It's his ability to remain on the pitch. Yeah. And if he stays fit, then Leeds United will stay up. This team has now been built around him. Yeah. This is the Dominic Calvert-Lewin team now. You give him the opportunity to put the ball into the back of the net, and it's brilliant. Leeds United in the Premier League is unbelievable. You know what they're like. What a wonderful football club.
It's a brilliant club.
Huge.
Brilliant club. Yeah.
Such a big bonus for them to be in the Premier League, along with Sunderland as well.
So your answer to this question, are Leeds United stay in the Premier League if... Yes. Let me chuck in if you're saying yes. Yeah, particularly if Calvert-Lewin stays fit for the next... If he plays 15 times and gets maybe 8 goals, maybe more, that should be enough. Because defensively, they're not awful. They're not awful.
No, they're not. And there's another question mark as well. He'll want to go to the World Cup.
Yeah,
and
England if he keeps scoring, by the way, I know. The number 2 striker.
England don't have a centre forward like him.
I know.
He's different to
Harry Kane's
and
the next guy up in line is up for grabs. Absolutely right. Last one I want to get your thoughts on. Just the last couple of games: Burnley 0, Everton 0. There was one I missed earlier. Brentford 4, Bournemouth 1. Good win, good hat trick for Kevin Schade. Yeah. But West Ham United 0, Fulham 1. Yeah. I'm like, West Ham have got to start winning. Like, this is a winnable game. They've got some good players at West Ham United. Lucas Paquetá, Jared Bowen, Crescencio Somerville, Souček. There's some experienced players there. Is this really going to happen, Danny? West Ham United, are they going to get relegated?
The moment it looks that way, I go back and I don't know whether you did any of the Mondays with me, but there was a few Mondays earlier on in the season when Nuno took over, and we got the starting 11. And you put the formation up and everything. Yeah. It was the complete opposite. He was playing left backs at right backs at left back, left backs at centre backs.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
He was doing all these different things, and I'm thinking to myself, so the problem that West Ham have now is that when Nuno went to Forest, he had a team that was sort of ready-made for him. They loved to defend. They had 2 really good defensive midfielders that would sit, and they had pace going forward. I look at this West Ham team, and I'm not convinced how comfortable the back four, the two centre-backs in particular, are defending. And then going forward, they don't have the pace. And you're now playing at a stadium.
Quick. Somerville, if you can keep him fit, he's quick. Yeah,
you have Somerville and Bowen, but I think they need a little bit more than that. And that's my concern. And then also you go back to what we said previously, which is Nottingham Forest and Leeds United, the home form will keep them up. I think if you're a West Ham United player at the moment, because things aren't going well, you're probably better playing away from home than you are at home at the moment, because there's sort of this nervousness, there's this unease, there's this unhappiness about it. So straight away, when you start the game, you feel as though you're sort of on the back foot. So January is going to be massive for the teams down at the bottom. And if West Ham can get themselves, I don't know, a centre forward or whatever it may be, maybe they could bridge the gap. But it's looking, if you push me now and said, okay, if West Ham don't, here's my question to you then. If West Ham don't go down, who will go down?
Well, I don't. Once I make a prediction, my prediction was Leeds United. We've just made a strong case there with the Calvert-Lewin that I didn't see. Obviously, I didn't see this happening. I thought he might be, struggle to get fit, etc., etc. He has been outstanding, and that really gives him a chance, and that puts West Ham United deep in trouble. I still wouldn't change that right now, Danny. We've still got 20 games to go. West Ham United can find a bit of rhythm, but Leeds have got momentum right now. It's going to be fascinating. I've got to say,
points as well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just finally, right? We've been down there. I actually got relegated at Leeds United Ellen Road one season, and it was the worst day of my career.
Twice. Awful.
Yeah, but it was a Leeds. I remember it right now. Sat on the field afterwards as teammates in tears. We're getting relegated out of the Premier League. I mean, it ain't our fun to watch when you're not involved in it. This battle at the bottom with West Ham, Leeds United, and maybe Forest. It's fascinating to see how it's going to pan out the second half of the season going into the end. So, apart from the top stuff and the European stuff, this is going to be some fight, because I did think Leeds, Burnley. I mean, Wolves have been a disaster. They've got no chance. So it's going to be a fascinating watch. Danny Higginbotham, thank you so much for jumping on the pod and giving Earl a couple of days off.
My pleasure, mate.
It's really great, fascinating. It's really interesting talking to you and getting your opinion on everything. So thanks very much. For everybody else, the next episode is on New Year's Day, January the 1st, where we recap midweek rounds of matches as festive fixtures continues on NBC, USA Network and Peacock. Thanks everybody for spending some time with us, and until next time, take care and we'll see you soon.